After 19 years, James Brown's tomb was opened and the shocking truth was finally revealed. For 19 years, the stone door of James Brown's tomb stayed sealed, silent, untouched, or so the world believed. But when that door was finally opened, what they found inside was not the peaceful resting place of a legend. It was a nightmare. Empty coffins, missing bones, signs of forced entry, and total silence from those who should have protected him. How does the godfather of soul, a man who changed music forever, end up abandoned in death? Before we uncover the truth, they tried to hide. Hit like, subscribe to Legends of Black Excellence, and stay with me, because this story will make you question everything about fame, legacy, and respect. 19 years of silence. The legend left in a temporary tomb. When James Brown, the legendary godfather of soul, passed away on December 25, 2006, the entire music world stood still. This was the man who recorded over 50 studio albums, transformed funk and soul into global phenomena, and influenced generations of artists from Michael Jackson to Prince. He was a cultural force who broke racial barriers and became a symbol of Black excellence and empowerment. Fans expected a grand funeral and a memorial worthy of his impact. Instead, after a brief public tribute tour in New York, South Carolina, and Georgia, his body was placed in a private crypt on his daughter Deanna Brown Thomas's property in Beach Island, South Carolina. The family claimed it was only temporary until a proper mausoleum or museum could be built. That single word, temporary, became the foundation of a promise that would remain unfulfilled for nearly 2 decades. At first, supporters believed the delay was due to legal formalities or plans for a monumental resting place. The man who sold millions of records and rewrote the sound of American music surely deserved a burial site open to the public filled with tributes and history. Yet years passed and nothing changed. There was no groundbreaking for a memorial, no architectural design revealed, no fundraising completed. The crypt sat behind trees away from main roads, almost hidden. There wasn't even a headstone with his full legacy engraved, just a simple stone marker with his name. No spotlight, no plaque, no flowers laid by fans. For someone whose entire life was lived under bright lights and roaring crowds, this quiet abandonment felt shocking. How could a titan of culture be sealed away in silence as if forgotten by the world he helped shape? The public began to ask questions not just about negligence, but about respect. Why was he not laid to rest in a prominent cemetery like other icons? Why did his family not honor their own vow? Behind closed doors, family disagreements, financial disputes, and conflicting intentions slowed every decision. Some relatives fought over control of his image, his estate, and even his burial rights. Others believed moving him required unity, something the family never achieved. As years turned into a decade, the temporary crypt began to symbolize something darker, the way society often glorifies Black artists on stage, but fails to protect their legacy once the applause fades. The man who once shouted, "Say it loud, I'm Black and I'm proud," was now lying in an isolated stone chamber, surrounded not by music, but by silence. By the time the 19th year approached, the situation had become more than a family matter, it was a cultural embarrassment. Fans who tried to find the crypt described it as cold, lonely, and without any indication that one of the most influential musicians in history rested there. No memorial garden, no museum, no public access. It felt like history itself had been buried. The stone door stood still, untouched, like a frozen reminder of a promise no one kept. People across the country began to question whether this was negligence or something more disturbing. How could America celebrate his music but ignore his final wish? How could a man who changed sound, style, and freedom be left in a forgotten corner of the woods? That unsettling disconnect sparked the first shock, if even James Brown could be left in silence. What does that say about how we treat our legends? Strange signs and nighttime rumors around the crypt. In the early years after James Brown was laid to rest in the secluded crypt on his daughter's land, the area remained unusually quiet, too quiet for a man of his magnitude. But over time, strange patterns began to surface, raising eyebrows among locals and loyal fans. Residents in Beach Island reported seeing unmarked vehicles pulling up to the gate late at night. These cars never stayed long, just a few minutes before disappearing without explanation. They bore no official logos, no family identifiers, and no security markings. Sometimes they arrived in pairs, sometimes alone, but always in secretive silence. For a place that was supposed to be untouched and protected, the constant stream of nighttime visitors sparked suspicion. Why would anyone go near the crypt in the dead of night unless they were doing something they didn't want the public to see? The stories grew even more unsettling when witnesses began noticing beams of light slicing through the dark woods. On rainy nights or foggy mornings, faint flashlight glows flickered between the trees, inching closer to the crypt. At first, locals assumed it was family security checking the grounds, but those who lived nearby knew the difference. The movement was too cautious, too deliberate, as if someone was mapping the area or searching for something. One convenience store owner claimed he saw silhouettes walking toward the crypt before quickly hiding behind trees when a car passed. Others reported hearing gravel crunch under slow footsteps after midnight. There were no security guards on staff, no cameras visible, and no official explanations. The mystery deepened. Who was entering the property, and what were they looking for? It wasn't until physical evidence appeared that rumors turned into alarm. Some fans who made the pilgrimage to find James Brown's resting place noticed unusual damage around the stone entrance. Chisel-like marks appeared near the edges of the crypt door. Thin, straight scratches resembling saw cuts lined the surrounding metal braces. Portions of the stone looked newly disturbed, lighter in color, as if recently exposed. These were not signs of weathering or natural decay. They looked man-made. People whispered that someone had tried, maybe even succeeded, in opening the tomb years earlier. But if that were true, why was there no investigation? Why was nothing reported? The absence of answers was louder than any official statement. The silence suggested either fear or cover-up. As these discoveries spread through fan communities, anger began to build. James Brown was not just another celebrity. He was a cultural icon who shaped the sound of an entire era, fought for civil rights, and gave black artists global visibility. To see his resting place treated with secrecy, neglect, and possible intrusion was beyond disrespect. It was a betrayal. Devoted supporters who once honored his legacy with pride now felt helpless and excluded from the truth. If someone tampered with his tomb, why didn't anyone protect him? Became the unspoken question echoing across forums, fan pages, and local conversations. The realization cut deep. Even in death, one of the greatest entertainers in history was not granted the dignity he deserved. And worse, those who were supposed to guard his legacy might have allowed the unthinkable to happen. This wasn't just suspicious. It was the beginning of a chilling mystery. A fortune worth millions and a family at war. Behind the haunting silence of James Brown's tomb lay a financial empire powerful enough to spark one of the most chaotic inheritance battles in music history. At the time of his death in 2006, his music catalog, including timeless hits like I Got You, I Feel Good, Papa's Got a Brand New Bag, and It's a Man's World, continued to generate millions of dollars annually in royalties, licensing agreements, and sampling rights. Estimates placed his total estate value between $50 million and $100 million. But the true number was difficult to determine due to hidden contracts and international revenue. Brown didn't just have albums, he had publishing rights, performance rights, concert footage, and merchandising deals still active decades after release. His legacy wasn't just musical, it was financial gold. But the problem wasn't the size of the fortune. The problem was who owned it. And that single question would ignite a war that lasted longer than some careers. James Brown fathered at least 9 legally recognized children, but several others claimed biological connection and demanded DNA verification. To make matters worse, these children came from different mothers, many of whom had no relationship with each other and held competing interpretations of Brown's final wishes. The original will, written years before his death, left most of his wealth to a scholarship fund for underprivileged children in South Carolina and Georgia. However, a newer will surfaced, allegedly revised shortly before he died, which allocated more assets to certain family members, especially his youngest son and his last partner, Tommy Ray Heine. But controversy exploded when some relatives argued that Heine was never legally married to Brown due to a previous undisclosed marriage, therefore making her claim invalid. Suddenly, the question wasn't just who gets the money, it became who counts as family. Every new piece of paperwork brought new twists, and every twist led to another courtroom showdown. Over the next 15 years, the inheritance case spiraled through probate court's appeals and even the South Carolina Supreme Court. Judges recused themselves, lawyers switched sides, and multiple mediations collapsed. Some family members sued to overturn the will, others sued to validate it. Even Brown's charitable foundation, meant to provide scholarships to poor students, was frozen for over a decade, while legal fees consumed millions of dollars that should have gone to education. At one point, guardians were appointed to manage certain assets while other properties remained in limbo. The estate became a battlefield, with each side accusing the other of manipulation or betrayal. Publicly, they appeared to pursue justice. Privately, they engaged in emotional warfare, leaking rumors, forming alliances, and attempting backroom negotiations. When the courts finally announced a settlement in 2021, many believed the nightmare was over. But what the world didn't know was that the real conflict was only beginning. After the courtroom battles ended, the family's war simply moved out of sight. Relatives who smiled in press conferences continued to fight behind closed doors over royalties, image licensing, and control of Brown's legacy. Some believed the settlement was unfair. Others felt silenced. The biggest fracture came when discussions began about confirming Brown's remains for any future legal protection, suggesting the possibility of reopening the crypt. That proposal reignited buried tensions. Those who had remained quiet for years suddenly spoke up, exposing old wounds and unresolved distrust. In whispered conversations, they questioned missing documents, alleged forged signatures, and secret deals made during litigation. Brown's body, once a symbol of unity and mourning, had become a bargaining chip in a second-phase inheritance battle. The court may have closed the case, but the family never did. As long as James Brown's name could generate millions, the arguments never stopped. In the end, the real tragedy was clear. The man who spent his life bringing people together through music left behind a legacy powerful enough to tear his own family apart again and again, with no end in sight. The secret decision to open the tomb for the truth. As the legal battles finally cooled after more than a decade of public turmoil, many believed the James Brown estate war had come to an end. But beneath the surface, a new question was growing, one that no court could answer. In private conversations, one of Brown's sons quietly raised a concern that had haunted him for years. Was their father truly resting in the crypt? After countless rumors of midnight visitors, unexplained damage, and shifting caskets, he could no longer ignore the signs. His proposal was simple, yet explosive conduct, a physical verification of the remains. What began as a cautious suggestion quickly turned into a moral dilemma. Was it more respectful to preserve his tomb undisturbed, or to open it for the sake of truth? The family immediately fractured into two opposing forces. One side insisted that touching the crypt was a violation of sacred ground and a dishonor to their father's memory. They argued that James Brown wanted peace, not publicity. The other side believed that real respect meant certainty, that allowing doubt to linger was a deeper form of disrespect. Some relatives feared that if they didn't act now, future lawsuits over inheritance or DNA claims would resurface again and again. Others suspected something far more disturbing, that the strange signs around the tomb might not be rumors but evidence that someone had already interfered. Silence, once used to protect his legacy, was now feeding suspicion. Eventually, logic and anxiety overpowered tradition. The decision was made: the crypt would be opened. But this would not be a public moment of closure. There would be no cameras, no media, no funeral-style gathering. The operation was executed in total secrecy. Only a handful of family members were informed. They quietly obtained a special permit from local authorities, then contacted a respected forensic expert known for working on high-profile cases. The date and time were never publicly disclosed. Even neighbors were unaware of what was happening. Under the cover of early morning stillness, a small convoy arrived at the crypt. The air was thick with tension. Nobody spoke more than a whisper. As the heavy stone door was slowly pried open, the sound echoed like a crack in history. Those present held their breath, preparing themselves for whatever lay beyond the darkness. What they expected to find was a preserved coffin holding the man who changed music forever. Instead, what they saw stopped them in absolute silence. The caskets inside were not in their original positions. One appeared to have its lid previously tampered with. Another was severely damaged. And in the most terrifying discovery, one casket was nearly empty, containing only worn cloth and a few scattered bone fragments. The forensic expert examined the scene with a grim expression before confirming the unthinkable: someone had likely interfered with the remains long before this day. No one could say when. No one could say who. The truth they thought they wanted now felt heavier than any lie. In that moment, the family realized a horrifying reality. Opening the tomb didn't just uncover the past. It exposed a secret that would change James Brown's legacy forever. What they saw inside shocked everyone. The moment the crypt door creaked open, a cold, heavy air rushed out as if the past itself exhaled. The small group inside held flashlights tightly, their beams slicing through the darkness to reveal a scene that felt wrong from the very first glance. The coffins were not where they were originally placed nearly 2 decades ago. One had been pushed slightly to the side, leaving visible drag marks on the floor. The lid of the largest casket, the one believed to be James Brown's, showed disturbing evidence of forced entry. There were clear indentations along the edges, as if a tool had been wedged underneath and pried with force. Wood splinters crumbled at the touch. This was no act of nature, no slow decay of time. It looked deliberate, calculated, and hidden. But the deeper they looked, the more the horror grew. One casket, supposed to contain a full body, was completely empty, nothing but a few strands of fabric clinging to the bottom. Shock rippled through the room. Someone whispered, "This can't be real." The other coffin was in even worse condition. The interior was partially collapsed and covered in dust, but when the forensic expert gently lifted the cloth, only a few small bone fragments remained. No full skeleton, no intact structure, just scattered pieces of someone who was once larger than life. The worn burial garments, now tattered and faded, lay like ghosts of memory. The silence that followed was suffocating. This was supposed to be the final resting place of a legend, yet it resembled evidence from a crime scene. The forensic specialist examined every corner with a somber expression, taking samples and documenting damage to the stone and metal around the crypt. When he finally spoke, his words cut through the tension like a blade. It appears the site was interfered with long ago. That single sentence confirmed the family's worst fear: someone had been inside before them. But who? A thief? A relative? Someone seeking DNA? Or something darker? The expert admitted that due to the age of the disturbance and the lack of surveillance or records, there was not enough evidence to determine who did it, when it happened, or why. The ultimate violation had taken place in silence, and no one had noticed, or perhaps no one had spoken. The truth was right in front of them, yet still out of reach. A full report was prepared shortly after the examination, but it was never released to the public. Only a few individuals were granted access to the findings. Those who read it said the language was carefully worded, almost as if designed to reveal just enough, without igniting legal chaos. The document confirmed tampering, confirmed missing remains, confirmed negligence, but offered no resolution. And then the door of secrecy slammed shut once again. Family members refused interviews. Lawyers avoided questions. Any attempt by journalists to investigate was met with silence. The world was left with rumors and heartbreak. Fans who once believed their idol was resting in peace now faced a darker truth. His legacy had not only been trapped in legal battles, but his body itself had been disturbed, displaced, and possibly stolen. The crypt was no longer just a burial site. It had become the center of one of the most chilling mysteries in music history. How could a global icon vanish from his own grave? And why was no one willing to talk? Legacy in chaos. Did society fail? James Brown. When news of what was found inside James Brown's crypt began to quietly leak, the reaction was nothing short of heartbreak. Fans who had worshipped his energy, his stage presence, and his unmistakable voice felt a surge of grief and fury. For them, this was not just about bones or coffins, it was about dignity. How could the man who shaped modern music, inspired civil rights movements, and became a symbol of black excellence be left in such a violated state? Many felt personally betrayed, as if a piece of history had been stolen from them. Social media forums exploded with outrage and fan groups demanded transparency. But as the calls for answers grew louder, the people who could speak, the family, the estate, the legal representatives, chose silence. Their refusal to address the issue only deepened public suspicion. The world was left to wonder. Was the truth being hidden? Or was it simply too painful to face? The media, sensing the magnitude of the situation, began to ask the questions no one wanted to answer. If the remains are missing, is James Brown truly buried there? If his body was disturbed, who allowed it to happen? But the most haunting question of all struck at the core of spiritual belief. If his physical form is not at rest, can his soul ever be at peace? This idea shook people deeply, especially within the Black community, where ancestral respect and burial traditions hold powerful meaning. The idea that America could celebrate James Brown on stage, but fail to protect him in death, exposed a painful hypocrisy. Was this disrespect a tragic accident, or a reflection of a society that profits from Black talent, but refuses to honor their humanity once the spotlight fades? The tragedy of James Brown's final chapter became even more unsettling when compared to other legends who faced similar fates. Prince died without a will, leading to years of legal chaos and family conflict. Rick James's estate was tangled in lawsuits, and allegations of mismanagement followed for years. Whitney Houston, Michael Jackson, and Aretha Franklin all faced posthumous exploitation disputes or public controversy. These patterns revealed a disturbing reality. Black musical icons who built the foundation of American culture often experienced the same cycle of exploitation even after death. They gave everything: talent, innovation, legacy, but were rarely given protection or peace. James Brown's story was no longer just his own. It had become a symbol of something larger, something deeply wrong. Yet despite the pain, there is one thing that cannot be erased. James Brown's influence still echoes worldwide. His music continues to be sampled by top artists, played in films, studied in universities, and celebrated on global stages. He invented grooves that shaped hip-hop, soul, R&B, and even pop culture itself. But while his voice lives on, the mystery surrounding his death has transformed his legacy into a cultural reckoning. His unfinished story forces the world to confront a hard truth. How do we honor the people who changed everything? Is legacy just about music and fame, or about how we protect those who created it? James Brown fought his entire life to break barriers. Now, even in death, he exposes the uncomfortable questions society must answer. Why do we love our legends on stage, but fail to respect them when the curtain falls? Even after the crypt was opened and the horrifying truth was revealed, one question still hangs in the air. How could a man who reshaped music, broke racial barriers, and inspired generations be denied peace in death? James Brown's legacy lives through every beat, every performance, every artist he influenced. But his final chapter exposes how society often celebrates Black greatness on stage, yet neglects it in silence. Did we truly honor him, or did we fail him when it mattered most? Let's talk about it. Should legends be protected even after death, and who is responsible?